Renzo, I think considering the news events happening recently, I want to talk today about taking responsibility, owning your actions, your acts. Say, you know what? Yes, I did wrong and I need to pay for it.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's one of perhaps the only way that we as a society, since we're talking about, as you mentioned, what's going on, it's one of the only ways that we can move forward as a society. If there's responsibility, if there's accountability and consequences when someone does something wrong, when someone breaks the law.
Especially if you're an agent or a police officer or an immigration officer, you should take responsibility. And that is why today's sentence for just a Spanish phrase is a lo hecho, pecho.
That's right. And we should say welcome to Just a Spanish Phrase, a podcast where we explore the origins and uses of common idiomatic expressions in Spanish. And it is a companion podcast to News in Slow Spanish. That one is in Spanish.
Yes, and in News in Slow Spanish, we give you the news in Spanish, and we have a huge catalog of idiomatic expressions where we say the expression in Spanish and we talk about it in context.
That's right.
In Spanish with the expression. But today we're talking about a lo hecho, pecho, and we will give you all the details about this expression in English.
That's right. And like you said, in News in Slow Spanish, where we talk about the news, of course, you might hear stories about about what's going on in this country right now with immigration enforcement officers and border patrol officers being sent to cities to carry out these raids, which are wildly unpopular because of the brutality and also the disregard, the almost coordinated disregard for local laws and the law of the land in general, the federal laws that they're supposed to uphold as agents, right? We could go into all the specifics of the different things that have been happening, so many examples, but the one thing that, of course, relates to our expression for today, a lo hecho pecho, is that there seems to be a lack of accountability, of people taking responsibility for their actions. There's much more avoiding responsibility, hiding identity, and claiming, this is you Vice President Vance and Stephen Miller, the White House, I forget what his title is. He's an advisor to the president, but he said that agents have broad immunity to do whatever they want to carry out this mission. And that simply isn't true. That's the opposite of facing the consequences for your actions. That's like saying, there are no consequences. I'll do whatever I want.
And fortunately, in this, there's silver lining, you know. I'm glad we nowadays have phones where we can record everything. And they tried not to face the consequences with what happened in Minnesota with Pretty. And fortunately, there were videos showing, this person was not a threat. So you cannot say like it was his fault or it was self-defense. So a lo hecho pecho, the officers who did this need to face the consequences.
Right. In a court of law, just like anyone would, because something went wrong. And we've all seen it. Something clearly went wrong. So this expression, a lo hecho pecho, if I were to translate it literally, it would be what is done, I show my chest. It doesn't translate very elegantly, but it's like saying facing forward to what has been done, to the actions that have been committed. There is an expression in English. It sounds different, but it conveys the same meaning, and it also says facing. Can you guess?
Face the music.
Face the music. That's right. And that one has an interesting origin. Really quickly, I'll mention, it is believed, right, with a lot of these expressions, and the same is true for the Spanish one we're talking about today, when they come out of oral tradition, there often isn't any concrete evidence about where exactly it originated. It was just in use popularly, by people in oral tradition, and then it gets recorded somewhere and becomes quote unquote more official. But facing the music, one popular theory is that it's referencing actors who are literally facing, in traditional theaters the orchestra pit where the music comes from.
Really? That is fascinating.
Yeah, that's the facing the music. But a lo hecho pecho is very different. So here it's also about your front, right? The pecho, the chest, is the front of your body. And so it's saying you present the front of your body to lo hecho. In other words, the actions that have been committed, what's been done. And the implication is that if there's something that has been done that's wrong, then you need to face the consequences for those actions. It's taking responsibility. Now, like so many phrases coming out of oral tradition, it's not totally clear exactly where it came from. There is one first mention, one first record.
Let me guess, in the Bible?
No. In this case, it was first written down by Gonzalo Correas in the year 1627. But for all we know, it was used in oral tradition long before that. And I went through a rabbit hole, as I usually do. You know this, researching our phrases. And the most interesting theory that I could find is about firing squads. So, if you're facing the consequences for your actions, right?
Your chest is exposed to the bullets.
And not only that, I kept reading, and the interesting thing about exposing your chest and sticking out your chest, which was apparently a thing that was common in firing squads, those that were about to be executed would stick their chest out because if you think about old rifles, and I'm thinking like muskets at this time, they were notoriously for having bad aim. They were notorious for not being very reliable to shoot.
So you want to be executed as fast as possible.
Yes!
So you want your heart to be exposed.
Exactly. Prisoners about to be executed in firing squads, the story goes, would stick their chest out, expose them because they wanted to be hit in the heart to die as quickly as possible instead of having to endure sometimes multiple rounds. This would happen. Sounds awful. It's true.
This got very dark very
I know.
quickly.
It often does. But speaking of dark, facing the consequences, facing the music, a lo hecho pecho, there are so many examples of people that should be facing the consequences for their actions and don't.
I was just discussing the other day with friends the Sackler family, their responsibility in the OxyContin crisis, in the opioid crisis in this country. I don't think they've ever faced the consequences. I was walking around Harvard the other day and I saw there's an entire building called the Sackler building. It's like, how are we still honoring that family when they have such a huge responsibility based on multiple reports, investigations, documentaries in that crisis, in pushing OxyContin to be sold, sell more, giving doctors big cars, big mansions, big trips.
There's no doubt in my mind that they bear so much responsibility for this pandemic of addiction. And I think it just shows that if you have enough money, you don't have to face the music.
A lo hecho pecho, you're protected.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be.
It all makes me think too about it's been going on for a few years, but the call for companies that are responsible for polluting our environment. There's a growing movement calling for their contribution to cleaning up. Basically, a lo hecho pecho, face the consequences. If you polluted, you should be contributing to the cleanup process. It's that simple.
And also, as
do you agree
citizens,
with that?
I do.
I knew you would. I'm sorry. Keep going.
But I was thinking also, okay, it's very easy to blame corporations, to blame others, but what about our own responsibility? When do we as individuals face the music? For example, now everybody's using AI as crazy, including me, and it has huge environmental consequences because AI uses a lot of energy. So we too should face the music and say, okay, I'm going to limit my use of AI to very specific things, or how do we face the consequences?
I guess we can all do it, from big examples, large corporate criminals to, agents from the federal government acting outside the law, and then even just everyday individuals like you or me making choices that perhaps could be better, we should all face the music. We should all say a lo hecho pecho and take account of the choices we make.
And on that note, we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much for listening to Just the Spanish Phrase, and we'll be back with more.
Adios.